Our consultant, Jake Petrosky with Stewart Inc. is on the call, as well as Meg Nealon, who's been helping and assisting with updating the plan. And they actually have a beautiful presentation to give you all. And I know Jake is a panelist, so he should be able to share his screen. Or
this is about the future land use plan we've been working on with staff. I want to talk a little bit about just the project in general, what it means to you all in the town, a little bit about what we heard in terms of analysis and input, and then also some recommendations that we have in the plan. Introduce you to your consulting team, me and a couple other folks at Stewart, and then Meg Nealon, who's also on the call as well. We really enjoyed working through this with staff and in the steering committee. I want to especially thank staff for coordinating all the meetings that we've had in terms of public meetings and steering committee meetings and getting the word out about the survey and that sort of thing. And then also want to extend a thank you to the steering committee members as well. Charity has been on there, and a number of other folks that, we had a lot of night meetings, and some of them were kind of long, and we had a lot to talk about because this plan is pretty foundational. I mean, it's really looking at the next 10 or 20 years of the town. So there was a lot to talk about. So I do want to give a special thank you to the steering committee members for committing their time and attention to this over the last 8 months or so. The steering committee, the schedule, we started in June and had a lot of analysis and a tour and that sort of thing for steering committee, the engagement analysis. A key part of that was the survey, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and also the stakeholder interviews. The plan development part of this really began in the fall, where we drafted recommendations and a future land use map, and had a community open house to review the draft recommendations and land use map. And then we put it in this document that you all have seen as the product of this. And I'm trying to distill everything into a manageable amount of slides for you. So I'm going to go pretty quick and talk about the highlights. So that if you have some questions about individual things, feel free to bring those up at the end. So a land use plan, first of all, it's long range. It looks at the 10 or 20 year time frame where we want to be in 10 or 20 years, while recognizing some of the constraints and issues that we're dealing with and have to overcome. It does provide guidance in terms of land use and intensity and design of things. Provide guidance for staff and programs, infrastructure investment, because you all know with sewer capacity limitations that you'll have had, we can't serve the world with a high level of service. So it's important to understand where we can serve. It's collaborative. It's really meant to be a community conversation that occurs periodically, and we kind of talk about where we are and where we want to go. It is policy. It's not regulatory. This plan does not amend the zoning ordinance, the UDO, or the zoning map, or anything like that. But it can lay the groundwork, and we do make some suggestions in the plan about how you could potentially make your UDO work better for you, and also where to encourage some rezonings and that sort of thing. So it does provide some guidance, but it doesn't amend the zoning ordinance. So a little bit on the analysis and input side. I mean, we looked at existing plans and ordinances, demographics. You all have had pretty steady population growth that is expected to continue and accelerate over the next coming years. So it's a really important part is to plan, is to really think about where we want to be in 10 or 20 years. And that's a fundamental thing of what we've done here. The last plan is quite dated. The last plan was in 2012, and we really didn't even know the scope of Chatham Park in 2012. We kind of knew that it was coming, and roughly where it was, but not really what it was or the full extent of it or anything that has basically been clarified over the last 10 years. So it was time to do a plan. Community engagement was really important. We had a strong level of participation in the survey, over 500 responses. It was rankings, multiple choice. Priorities that came out of this: improvement of utilities and infrastructure was #1 priority. Environmental protection and conservation was #2 priority. Preservation of character was also important in growth management. Some of those things are interrelated. When we talk about new neighborhoods, we ask what makes a quality neighborhood? What do you want to encourage more of? And #1 was access to walking trails, greenways, parks, and green space. #2, sidewalks and crosswalks. #3 was interesting, but a mix of unit types for different households, different ages and backgrounds. So as you all, a planning board, these are the kinds of things that you want to see in new development. And you all can kind of, work with the development to get more of this. If there is a conditional zoning or something like that, you have influence on in terms of getting more of this stuff in new development, that's something that the survey says that citizens would support. Public open house, some of the key themes from the open house: balanced growth, tax base, jobs. You don't have a lot of high-paying jobs in Pittsboro, which is something. Aging population and not a lot of high-paying jobs. So understanding where we can grow the tax base, supporting downtown, growing downtown was important. Geographic balance. We have a lot of growth on the east side due to Chatham Park, but there was talk about some balancing some of the growth patterns a bit. Trail connections downtown to the Haw River and south. Downtown, there was a lot of conversation about this. A lot of people love downtown. They want to see it made more pedestrian friendly with wider sidewalks, better crosswalks, additional signage, better access to parking and public bathrooms, these sorts of things. So we did capture some of that in the recommendations. There are 6 main goals that really guide this plan. We really whittled the focus of this plan down significantly from the 2012 plan to really focus on land use. And one is grow strategically by investing in infrastructure and facilities that improve quality of life. Collaboration is another one, because you got some big issues that are coming and you can't deal with it alone, right? So coordination with county, the state and regional agencies is going to be really important when it comes to utilities and transportation. Supporting that vibrant, energetic downtown, creating opportunities for creativity, creative placemaking, entrepreneurship, innovation, and the arts. You are an arts destination, so supporting that. Balancing the preservation of existing neighborhoods with the need to increase and diversify housing opportunities. There's a lot of opportunity for the town of Pittsboro to accommodate growth that's coming to Chatham County, and arguably, it should go to towns and not outside in the county rural areas to protect agricultural and natural resources and all that. So you all have a role to play moving forward, but we also want to balance some existing neighborhoods and not impact them negatively. So that's important. Protecting natural resources was also a big part of this, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of these things when we get into the plan recommendations. So going into the plan elements, the recommendations are broken into 4 different categories: land use and housing, downtown, infrastructure, and natural resources and conservation. The land use plan itself, the future land use map, is a really important part of this document. It updates your land use plan significantly, because the old land use plan, it was hard for staff to use because so much has happened in the last 10 years. So this updates that. It kind of has a number of different character areas that are described in the plan and talk about what kinds of uses we want to see, what are some of the shared design characteristics, level of density or intensity. And there's some flexibility here. It is anticipated that there's going to be a number of zoning districts in each of these. So it's not necessarily a one-for-one to zoning, but it does lead the way. It should really guide rezoning decisions, development design, and that sort of thing. So briefly, in the center, you see the town center, and that's your core, your downtown area, and your downtown support area. Outside of that, this is where we want to see some infill and redevelopment where it makes sense, preserve historic features, that sort of thing, but provide some flexibility and use in those areas, because those are some really great opportunity areas for infill. The traditional neighborhood and infill, the orange category is kind of a medium to higher density residential development. These are areas that are already slated for this type of development through Chatham Park approval, or other areas that are just really well located, adjacent to planned mixed-use activity centers where we want to see some commercial growth and that sort of thing that could support some additional residential. More residential areas are in yellow, and then the rural conservation design is more lower density overall, although you could see a mix of development there. Employment mixed use is something that we wanted to identify opportunities for jobs at non-residential development, and some of those are planned as part of Chatham Park, but some are just areas where you have a lot of existing uses that are compatible with that, or some opportunity and not a lot of conflicts. The area that is employment TND, that is a striped area that is purple or blue for employment mixed use and TND. These are areas like around the plant and also out near 64 East, where it could go either way. We can let the market decide whether it can sustain some employment or some office or light industrial uses, or whether something that is more a medium to higher density residential is appropriate, as long as it's designed okay. So that's kind of a big picture look at this. You can see that there's also some new roadways shown on here, and as part of the plan, we did want to take the old comprehensive transportation plan that was done back in 2012 or thereabouts and update it based on some changes that we knew were already kind of in the works or approved through Chatham Park's recent plans, so that we could have a map that reflected the lane use and then also our roadway plans. So that's an important part of this. You can see that, so the purpose of this lane use map, it provides general lane use guidance. It should identify the intended development pattern, like where things are more, less density and more density, commercial mixed use areas. Policy is policy, not regulatory, but it should influence regulatory changes. It should be used to influence development design. It should guide rezoning decisions, and it should guide infrastructure investment decisions as well. So that's kind of what this is meant to be used for. And every rezoning, there's a consistency statement that staff produces, and it will reference policies in this plan, and will reference this map. And one of the things that we wanted to do was talk about these character areas a little bit. They're explaining the look and the feel of these different areas. There is some flexibility, but it's definitely been updated to reflect kind of what we're thinking, as opposed to the 2012 plan. So it should be easier for staff and you all to determine consistency compared to the old plan. And again, there could be multiple zoning districts within each of these, and we do specify where there's some updates to the zoning code that could be useful. So a couple lane use and housing recommendations: focusing growth near infrastructure and walkable to commercial and services. Big picture, those are some of the things that we want to do. So walkability was really important. We heard a lot about we want Pittsboro to be more walkable, downtown for sure, but also other areas, so other commercial areas and new neighborhoods. And there's this principle of the 3 Ds that lead to walkability. One is density. If you have more things closer together, the area is going to be more walkable. Think about the most walkable places you know of, like downtown Pittsboro or somewhere else. It is not the Walmart by the highway with, a building way over here and a building way over here, right? You could walk between those buildings, but it's really hard. And not a lot of people do it. So density, and also, just people, having more people closer to commercial opportunities, restaurants, shops, that sort of thing. There's more likely to generate walk trips. Diversity. So diversity of uses. So instead of just having all our residential over on this side of town and all our commercial on this side of town, which is kind of what was the thinking back in the 1970s, when we were trying to design towns and keep things that were potentially conflicting separate. We're kind of changing the way that we think about things, and we want diversity. We want things that are compatible closer together, in terms of even shops and residential, like that, the diversity of those things, and encouraging a mix of those things, and identifying barriers to that true mixed use development is something that we're rethinking. Design of development. If you put a sidewalk somewhere, you can build that sidewalk a number of different ways. You can design that sidewalk a number of different ways. If it is 3 foot wide and right up next to a 60-mile-an-hour highway, well, the design of that is not really conducive to people walking. Right? You're not going to want to walk along that stretch of roadway. But if you set it back from the roadway, if you do some trees in between the sidewalk and the roadway, it's of adequate width, so it's shaded. You have benches. All these things are design related, but they actually, support walkable areas, crossings, like having crosswalks and that sort of thing. So design is also important. So supporting walkability in different ways. There's a lot more detail in the plan. About housing, we talk about some ways in the plan to remove barriers to infill development and some missing middle housing types. The missing middle housing types is just things that are not quite big apartments and not quite single family homes on big lots, right? The missing middle, including, attached homes and triplexes and stuff like that, we're missing that in our housing stock because we haven't really built a lot of that stuff since the 1950s or 60s. That's because of zoning kind of prohibited everything except for apartments and single family homes. But there's a lot of opportunity there for, for sale or for rent product that appeals to a lot of different age groups and family types. And that's something that we want to get more of in the right places in the town. But also, it's about that scale and what's appropriate in different neighborhoods. So preserving the character of neighborhoods is also important. We talk about that. These are just some residential development preference images from the public meeting that people said they generally liked. So we had some stuff that was a lot bigger, but these are the kind of scale mixed use buildings with live work units that folks wanted. Townhomes and attached residential that was a little smaller, multiplex apartments that are not 4 stories tall. Mixed residential at single family scale, so pocket neighborhoods and smaller lot stuff, and then accessory dwelling units. This is something that is a way to encourage what they call gentle density, where you allow for someone to put an accessory dwelling unit if they have a big enough property and can fit it. And that's a way to encourage, keeping the scale of the neighborhood and character of the neighborhood, but allowing a couple, different kinds of units in there. And those can really be attractive to young professionals, teachers, older folks as well. So that's just some things that, we talk about in the plan. Downtown, we talk about a lot. Update of the downtown vision plan is needed. It's been a number of years since it's been updated, and a lot has happened. And like this, the announcement that the county is moving their offices out west of town. So that's going to be a whole quadrant of downtown that we really need to think about and how it fits into the whole. Attracting new businesses downtown. Infrastructure upgrades. We heard a lot from the steering committee about the need for water sewer upgrades downtown to support the kind of development we want to see. But then also streets. Hillsborough is nice. It could be reconfigured a bit potentially. to add a little bit more width in terms of sidewalk, make it a little bit easier to get around. But really, the side streets are an opportunity. In some places, you have sidewalks, and in some places, you don't. In some places, you have curb and gutter. In some places, it's just a very narrow road with a swale section. And if we want to encourage, development in our downtown to grow, then some of those streets need to change. They can work more for the town. We could have better sidewalk connections. Some of those streets might be appropriate for on-street parking. Parking is always going to be an issue, and if your downtown continues to be successful, it's going to be an issue. So, we need to make those streets work better for us. Form-based design, so thinking about, design and character of new development, but we don't need to be too stringent. We actually need to be a little flexible in some cases to allow innovation. This is something that we heard a lot about. We don't want necessarily everything to be cookie cutter. Pittsboro is not a cookie cutter place. You all are kind of a little different, a little funky, and that's okay. So let's allow some innovation there. In new and improved public spaces, we have there were some plans that were made in the downtown vision plan. Those need to be updated, refined, including understanding of some of those big moving parts and how they fit in, like potential moving some county services west of town. Sewer capacity is something that we talked about a lot at the steering committee level. This is a priority to address the sewer capacity situation. I'm sure you all are aware, and the BOC is also aware, considering additional fees for fund utility expansion, utilizing the future land use map to estimate future demand for water and sewer, and continuing planning for it. Sidewalk, greenways, and trails is also something we talked about a lot. Greenways, we have a lot of plans that show where we want greenways, but after the sewer situation, we kind of need to make greenways a priority, get greenways on the ground a priority, because there's a lot of opportunities for key connections to Chatham Park, to the Haw River, to other parks, even west of town, along Robeson Creek, that would really add value to the town and quality of life and provide recreation opportunities, that sort of thing. Stormwater, including green stormwater infrastructure, which is things like bias wells, rain gardens, and green roofs that can help reduce impacts of new urban development on water quality. Infrastructure on the transportation side of things as well, coordinate the design of planned roadway projects. We did update some of the line work, but the full update of the town's comprehensive transportation plan in conjunction with Chatham County and DOT is needed. And during that, looking at intersection improvements, looking at long-term right-of-way that's needed is recommended. A couple things that we do want to call out. NC 87, it is going to function as the de facto truck route for the near future, and it should to get some trucks out of downtown. But there might need to be some improvements to intersections and roadway sections to accommodate freight traffic. US 64 business east and west of downtown. We need to look at that and see ways to improve it for access management to reduce safety concerns, improve kind of the visual aesthetics of that corridor, and then pedestrian and bicycle safety. So that's kind of your roadway system map. That's what it's saying. We did receive a grant from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, a Partnership with Green Growth grant. So we were able to include a conservation element, natural resource and conservation element in the plan. This identifies priority natural resources and includes recommendations to protect them. Talks about things like the benefits of riparian buffers, other priority habitats that occur in the town limits and the ETJ, and then also some of the wildlife that frequents those things, the species of concern, and some conservation recommendations. Brooke Massa, who's a wildlife biologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, helped us out with this, and we have a lot of good information in the plan and some recommendations that can really relate to the design of new development in certain areas and make it a little bit greener and a little bit more environmentally friendly. A couple things like preserving high quality habitat and incentivizing conservation design as opposed to conventional design. Conventional design, you just lot out the land and plan maybe a little bit of parks or green space, but conservation design really prioritizes conserving natural resources on site and clusters development away from that. Right now, your code is a little bit ambiguous related to conservation subdivisions, and we suggest updating that and incentivizing it. And we've talked with staff about some ways to do that. And, we think it could be a win-win situation for natural resources and also for flexibility for landowners and developers. Maintaining and improving water quality, stormwater is really big. It's going to be something that needs to be addressed long term. Open space connections and greenway connections, I've talked about those. And conservation of heritage trees and encouraging native plants and new developments also recommended as part of this plan. We have some natural resources conservation target areas that are shown that just talk about some of the special things in different parts of town. And these are some areas that we can allow and incentivize conservation design everywhere, but especially in these areas, we want to do it. So hopefully this is a little opportunity for folks to get to know, what's in different parts of the study area. So yeah, so that's kind of my short overview of what's in the plan. Happy to answer questions about specifics in the plan, what's in there, what's not in there, and any clarification that you would like me to provide.